Anyway, so when I met my husband at 18 on my 18th birthday, it was quite weird because I literally walked into a room, saw this guy sitting on the floor and just thought, I'm going to marry him. That was what I heard in my head. I assumed it was myself, and I just thought, well, if I'm going to marry him, I suppose I better introduce myself then. So I just went over, sat down, introduced myself, and within half an hour we were kissing, and about 9 months later we got married, bought a house. I was nursing at the time, so it all worked out well. We were together for a few years, absolutely loved him. I think he loved me back. And then everything was great until just before my 21st birthday. It was my 20th year. I think everything shifted. And anyway, I had gone to bed one night as normal. He got up for work, brought me a cup of coffee. He left quite early in the morning. I went to sleep. I'm not going to go too much into detail about all this stuff because I'm sure it's probably getting quite boring, but I have actually written books which are quite well hidden. They're not promoted and they're not publicised. So if any of you want to read those, you can probably find them on Amazon. Dancing Forever Aflame is the second one. Dancing Through Forever, I think, is what I called the first one. As I say, I wrote them years ago. I've left them on Amazon. I figured the right people will find them. They're just my life story, but they're in a great deal more detail than I'm giving you now. Anyway, as I say, going back to the story, I had these dreams and they were like no dreams I'd ever had before. I dreamt I was down south and I was visiting a couple and I knew them. I knew both of them, and there was a swimming pool and the guy was asking me if I wanted to go for a swim, and I was not keen on this idea at all. And I said, no, I haven't got a costume. And his wife came in the door and said, there you go, you can borrow mine. So I put this on, got in this pool, and he started trying to kiss me and things. And I'm not sure exactly what happened. It was like the dream skipped forward. And the next thing I knew, I was awake. I knew exactly who he was, and I was absolutely desperate not to wake up, not to come back to the real world, just to stay there. And he sort of held me and we got out the pool and things, and he said, look, you have to go back. You have to go back for now. It's not time. And I was desolate. And I woke up hysterical. I woke up absolutely screaming the place down, something I'd never ever done before. And I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, you're being ridiculous, stop it. It was just a stupid dream, go back to sleep. And I did. I dreamed I was in a castle and everyone was trying to get out. And the floor was falling in. And I started to fall through this floor, this crack that opened up, and he kind of appeared above me and grabbed a hold of me and pulled me out. He got me out the castle, he took me outside, and he got me to a taxi and said, yeah, I can't stay, I shouldn't even be here. And he literally left me. And again, woke up absolutely hysterical. And it was almost as if those dreams opened up the door in my head that led to all of the information I'd been given in the first place, because until that day, I had not considered where the whole don't get married, don't have kids and wait for the one that will come to you had come from. I'd never ever given it any thought. And I was so miserable that day. I started to try and work out what the hell it was all about and why I felt the way I did and who the hell I'd been dreaming of. I mean, I never dream about people I know. I'm always someone I don't know in a place I don't know with people I don't know. I'm not usually in my body. When I'm in my dreams, I'm normally commenting on what's going on in the action. If I am in them, I'm not really paying too much attention to what's going on. I wake up and they're all just images with people I don't know. It's very abstract. But this particular dream, it was like it was me and I was awake in them. So when I woke up, I just started to probe, and I started to look at, I write music, so all the songs I'd ever written were heartbreak, were where are you now, when are you coming for me, and what the hell is going on kind of songs. They were all very sad, all E minor. They're all, I don't know where you are, where are you? There was so many little clicks. There was the don't get married, have kids and things. It was all so, it all seemed to fit a big picture. And then I suddenly remembered the rules, and I thought, hang on a minute, because at that point in time my husband had started asking me if we could have kids. And it was like I was being given a choice between having a normal life, staying with my husband, and having children. And again, this voice in my head said, you can do that. It's up to you. It's your choice. You don't have to leave. You can stay. You can have a normal life. You don't have to come. You don't have to leave this and go and do anything else. You can just do what you're doing now. And I knew that I could, but I also knew that I didn't want to. That I wanted to go and find whoever that was, because I'd never, ever, ever felt that kind of emotion towards any other person in my lifetime. The way that I felt about him, I would literally have laid my life down for him. And that was just, it was so real, this dream. And I thought, wow, okay, so I'm meant to be here to meet this person. So why? What is it we're meant to do? And do I want to go find out? So it took me about 6 months to finally convince myself, because I thought, you're being ridiculous. I can't walk out on a perfectly good functioning life. I've got a house, I've got bills. We've got a world. I can't just walk away from that to go and find some random guy that I was told I was going to marry when I was a kid. This doesn't make any sense. I don't even know who told me this or where it came from. But I decided eventually I would never settle until I figured it out. So I left and I moved back to my hometown and got myself a bedsit. And it was literally just around my 21st birthday when all hell broke loose. And I pretty much, everything just changed overnight. I had made some friends over the Christmas period because my birthday's in the February, and they were friends with a couple of mediums. And I never really had any interest in anything esoteric. I didn't like the idea of ghosts. It scared the living out of me. I literally stayed away from anything to do with that sort of thing. I'd had some haunting experiences when I was younger, in my teens, when I first left home. Long story, I really don't want to go into it, but those things followed me around from the time that I left home. So yeah, I had a new lease on life at that point. I realised I was 21. I hadn't done anything with my life. I hadn't been anywhere. I'd not been abroad. I'd not really lived. I'd just gone from home to married life and a house and another kind of structure. And I realised that none of my opinions were my own. I didn't know what I thought about anything, because everything I thought came from my parents, or it came from society, or it came from TV. And I think that's part of the wake-up process. You realise that you haven't actually created your own mind. You haven't created your own view on the world. The world has created your view for you based on where you were born and who you were born to, and you know what you've watched on TV and what kind of an educational background you've came from. So I went back to college as well, and I was suddenly just filled with all this enthusiasm and energy. There was so much here to do and so much I wanted to experience, and I could do it. I had the same feeling that I had the day I left my husband in my previous life, where I realized I was only 25 and I had my kids and we had money. I had money, and that I had this whole life ahead of me. And that was the day I was killed. So I never really got to live that experience. Whereas this time around, I kind of did. Not in the same way, but we still did. So anyway, I had been friends with these mediums, and they were, they showed me all this different stuff that they did, and I found it all very fascinating. I wasn't afraid of any of it. They used to do the Ouija board once a week, and they talked to various spirits. One in particular who always, it seems ridiculous to say this, but was always really flirty with me, and I didn't fully understand how a spirit could be flirty, but there you go. And she did something that is called automatic writing, and she would close her eyes, and a pen would move on its own, and she'd write a message for someone who was sitting around us. And I went home, and I'd been warned, you don't do this alone. And I thought, yeah, whatever. So I went home that night, and I was doing my laundry for work the next day, and I thought, oh, go on, we'll have a go. So I basically sat down with my pen and paper, and it was like some unknown force just grabbed a hold of my hand, and it was the strongest feeling. I was not moving my hand. I was not writing, and it wasn't, I was expecting it to be the way it had worked for the medium, but it wasn't. It was, Gillian, relax your hand. And I was like, whoa, what on earth is going on here? So I kind of looked and thought, okay, go on then, we'll keep going. So put my pen back on, and the first thing he asked me was, he told me that his name was Carl. It wasn't Carl, but Carl will do. And basically asked me if I remembered the last time we spoke to each other. Oh yeah, I've missed that bit out. When I woke up from my dream, and I woke up screaming my head off, what he'd actually said to me as I woke up, that it wasn't time for us to be together. And I'd woke up hearing him say to me, I will write to you, which made no sense to me at all, because we were dreaming and I didn't really get how he could write to me. But he made me take my pen out to write this down, and he said, it's really, really important, I need you to remember it. And I was like, okay. And I put my pen down on the paper, and he made me write, I will write to you. And then I woke up hearing him say it over and over again as I was crying when I came back to myself that day. So that was about 10 months prior to my birthday. I'd put it out my head because it was far too painful to think about. I just wanted to forget it. I knew that somewhere out there was a guy I was meant to meet. I didn't know who he was, what he was, or when it would come about. And I decided to forget all of it and just go live. So I basically, was sat with my pen and paper, having just learned how to automatic write, and I get, do you remember the last time we spoke? And at this point, again, I'm all about the fun. I'm just like, yeah, I'm having a good time. I'm speaking to a ghost. This is cool. And I said, I don't think we've spoken to each other before. And I just watched as my hand started to write, I will write to you. I freaked, absolutely freaked. Pen went one way, pad went the other, threw myself across the floor, sobbed. And I thought, no, how could he know about that? How could he know about that? I haven't thought about that in months. I don't know how he could have thought about that. So picked my pen and paper back up once I calmed down. And he tried to tell me that he was my husband and we were meant to meet again in this lifetime, and that he had killed me in our last lifetime, which I didn't believe because I thought, yeah, this is all getting a bit freaky, and he's just lying constantly. I don't understand what he's talking about. And he told me he was the spirit off the board who had been flirting with me at the medium's house, and I laughed, and that I was his wife. And I said, I can't possibly be her, because she was 12. No, sorry, when she died, I was 12 years old. So I couldn't possibly have been your wife. And he said that I was, and he insisted. So I just thought, I don't understand why he's constantly lying. Everything he says to me is just rubbish. But over the course of the next few months, I, as weird as it sounds, fell completely head over heels in love with this spirit. He sounded so real in my head. It was like he was really there. I could see him, I could hear him, I could interact with him. He can touch me, he can manipulate my environment, and I didn't really understand what was going on, but it kind of erupted in my life and it took over everything, and all I really wanted to do was to die to be with him, because I figured he was dead, I'm alive, you know. There's a mathematical equation there, it doesn't end very well for me. And one day he told me that he wanted to introduce me to God, and I absolutely killed myself laughing at that. I said, really, you know God and you've made me an appointment? Okay. And he said that he would be coming to talk to me at 7 o'clock that evening. I'm giving you all the potted version here because it really is quite a long story, hence the books. But anyway, 7 o'clock that night, in floats this mass white mist. And I thought, okay, I'll bite, you know, hand on the pen, on the paper. And he told me he was God and I could call him Father. I've called him that ever since, to be fair. And he asked me when we spoke to each other last, and I, again, took it all in good fun and went, yeah, I don't think we've talked to each other. And he suddenly flashed this memory into my head. And again, a bit like the dream, I hadn't thought about it since the day it had happened. It was really too painful, but he flashed the last time when I was about 12 years old that I asked him to speak back to me. And I could not, I mean, it just blew my mind. How on earth could he have... It kind of lent credence to the fact that it really was God to me, because I had forgotten that memory. I don't know how he dredged it up, but that's basically where I'm going to leave it for now, because I've been talking for quite a long time. I'm getting very dry-mouthed. I'll come back and we'll start the next video from this point, because this is where pretty much everything in my life changed again. And it started the next several year period, which I'll talk about in the next one. So there you go.